Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk bugling, it's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's bugling 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I
button?
thought I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? The Elk Talk Podcast is brought to you by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, ensuring the future of elk, other wildlife, their habitat, and our hunting heritage. To become a member, go to rmef.org.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by Mountain Ops, making outdoor energy and performance nutrition to make you a stronger and healthier elk hunter. They have a full line of hunting-related supplements, including meal replacement shakes, multivitamins, pre-workout fuel, and post-workout recovery. And my favorite, their new performance protein bars that, by the way, are packed with 270 calories and 20 grams of protein, but contain less than 6 grams of sugar. Visit mountainops.com to learn more and to order, and be sure to use the promo code ELKTALK to save on your next order.
The podcast is also brought to you by Gerber. Go to gerbergear.com and learn about the knives, the Vital, the Big Game Vital, the Gator Premium, all the things that we use when we're out in the woods, and not just knives, but also some really cool multi-tools that they have.
And we have a promo code for Gerber as well. Just use the code ELKTALK to save 20% on your orders at gerbergear.com. And we are also brought to you by Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. And Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls is the original designer and inventor of the pallet plate diaphragm that's completely changed the way elk calls are made and used. And to find out more and to order your elk calls, go to RockyMountainHuntingCalls.com or buglingbull.com and use promo code ELKTALK, and you're going to save 15% on all of your elk calls and elk call accessories.
The Elk Talk Podcast is also brought to you by GoHunt.com. Go to GoHunt.com and sign up for the Insider. The Insider is changing how hunts and hunting information are found. No doubt about that. Use promo code ELKTALK, and when you sign up for the Insider, you're going to get $50 of store credit, mad money, in their gear shop.
Lastly, the University of Elk Hunting online course is a proud partner of the Elk Talk Podcast. And within the University of Elk Hunting online course, you're going to find nearly 60 chapters organized in 17 modules of elk hunting instruction aimed at making you a more successful elk hunter. From planning and e-scouting to calling strategies and packing, every imaginable elk hunting topic is included in the online course. And regardless of your previous elk hunting experience or success, I'm confident the University of Elk Hunting online course will make you a more confident, more successful elk hunter. Just visit elk101.com and use the promo code ELKTALK to save 20% when you sign up for a membership to the University of Elk Hunting online course.
And with that, Corey, we are ready to get into it.
Let's jump into it.
Good morning, Corey.
Howdy, Randy.
How's life in Idaho?
It is good. I'm trying to think of something to complain about, but I can't think of anything, so it's good.
Oh, man. You know, Mark Twain used to say, pessimists are seldom disappointed. You're an optimist, so I don't know what Mark Twain's statement was about optimists. But
well, I remember I used a quote when we were up in Alaska. It was something to the effect of, to those who feel life's a tragedy and to those who think a comedy, or something like that. So I try to think and not feel, and that keeps me laughing instead of crying.
My grandma used to say, if you get up in the morning and you think it's a good day or a bad day, you're probably right.
That's very true.
And I kind of take that as my approach to life when I get up in the morning. My default is every day is going to be a great day. And I go to the coffee shop here in Bozeman, and when I walk in there, I say, "Hey, Randy, how you doing today?" And I always say, "Oh, I'm perfect." And the one person said, "Well, have you ever had a bad day?" And I said, "Look, I'm almost 57 years old. I've never had a bad day in my life, and I'm not going to start a habit like that at this age. So don't be bringing me down here." And off I go. They probably think this guy's taking some sort of medication.
I was just going to say, I need to start taking the same stuff. My grandma didn't have cool quotes like that. In fact, the only one that I can remember from her, and I actually used it last night on my youngest son, Sam, but she said, if you have time to do a job twice, you had time to do it right the first time.
Ooh. Well, I had two grandmas who were very important in my life, and a great grandmother who was very important in my life. And so I've got all kinds of grandma quotes.
Man.
In fact, usually if I make one up and I'm thinking, oh, there's no way people think I thought of that, I just say, yeah, one time I heard my grandma say this.
Attribute everything to grandma.
Yeah, but I had one grandma whose mind was often in the gutter. And as she got older, that's what she talked about. And my wife is like, your grandma talks about that all the time. I'm uncomfortable. I said, look, she's 84 years old. She can talk about whatever she damn well pleases. So I'm not going to use those grandma quotes if you're okay with that.
That's probably a good thing.
Well, here we are. Today is October 19th. I apologize. Man. I know.
Where did
I gotta
September
apologize.
go?
Where did it go? I don't know. I'm looking for it. Did you find it?
No, in fact, I haven't heard an elk bugle in over 10 days, so I'm missing September.
Huh. You know how last year we said that the elk rut didn't seem as active across the West?
Yeah.
As, that was kind of the report. Well, this year, while I was up moose hunting here in Montana in the last couple of days of September and the first couple of days of October, I've never heard so much elk bugling.
Really?
Yeah, and I got a moose tag in my pocket. I'm walking around wearing blaze orange and carrying a rifle. Like, darn.
Man.
Teach me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, well.
Yeah, things just died off for me towards the end of the season, and they just haven't picked back up. I kept thinking, well, maybe we're going to get another little rush here, and I don't know if it's just area specifics. I've talked to some people that are like, oh, the elk have been just screaming first part of October, and man, the areas that I've been in have just been quiet all around. I've been in 4 different areas now since the last week of September, and just not hearing bugles. Yeah.
Wow. Huh. So you guys in Idaho, your archery season ends September 30th?
For the most part, yeah. Most of the over-the-counter stuff.
Yeah, kind of the same in Wyoming. I think Colorado ends right there towards the end of September.
Yeah. Oregon's the same.
Yeah.
And then there's Montana. It just
Montana.
The generosity there is just unbelievable.
Yeah, we hate elk, so we're on a mission to exterminate every elk that walks the planet here. So our archery season closed on Sunday, so we've been hunting them with a bow for 6 weeks. Now we're giving them 5 days off, and on Saturday rifle season opens, and you really got to be a smart elk to survive 5 or 6 seasons in Montana. But,
man, so they not only let you hunt them a long time, they give the elk a 5-day period to lull them into security, make them think they're safe. The woods die down, and they go back to their normal activity, and then they spring the rifle hunters on them. Yeah,
it's Saturday morning is going to be just brutal. It's You're going to, on the trailheads on the public land, you almost need to bring your own rock to stand on.
Well, it looks like there's going to be some weather, too, this weekend.
Yeah. While I was out of town, we got a big storm here a week ago Monday in Bozeman. We lost power. I wasn't here. My wife always complains, when you're gone is when we get these big snowstorms. I'm like, no, we don't. Well, sure enough, we get 8 inches of wet, heavy snow here in town, and the leaves haven't fallen off the trees yet, so it breaks all the limbs off the trees, which then break down the power lines, and my wife calls me, hey, where's the generator? Or the
power's out.
I'm like, well, I loaned it to the crew. They needed to charge batteries. She's like, oh. And then we had a long discussion about the reality of me always being gone and it always snowing. But I told her, I said, but honey, I did leave the snowblower and a can of gas out there for you. So I was thinking of you. And here's the bad part. She broke her foot about a week before that. So she's out there. Yeah, she's out there in a one of those walking boots, trying to blow 8 inches of wet, heavy snow.
Man, like, your name was mud that day.
Yeah, it's so all that marriage advice that we kind of slip in and out of here. I'm probably going to have some new techniques to try salvage marriage after that day. So
I just looked at your weather, and it looks like you're not getting near the bad weather we're getting. I don't know what's happening there.
We're on the fringe of it. You know, clean living up here in Montana. We don't get the weather you guys get in Idaho. Yeah,
I guess. And your air quality is 28. Ours is 129 today.
Really? What's causing that?
I don't know.
Well, no, we'll hunt them with a rifle now for 5 weeks. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, I think this year it's November 28th, is when we stop hunting bulls with a rifle. And then we hunt cow elk, pretty much anyone who wants one. We have these things called shoulder season. So we just go shoot the bejeebers out of cow elk for another, 8 or 10 months. In Alaska, there's only 1 month of the year you can't hunt black bears. I think in Montana, we're creeping close to that with the way we hunt elk. And I wonder...
They even take a month off in Idaho for wolf hunting in most units. Man.
It's I know people are thinking, Newberg, you're such a downer on Montana elk these days, but the reason I am is we're expanding our shoulder seasons to include now public lands. And the shoulder seasons came about with an awful lot of protests from hunters as extended shoot elk on private land late into the season, into February, and I think now even into March. And it wasn't, they say that they're over objective, but if you set the objective at 3% of the carrying capacity, it's not that hard to be over objective.
Yeah.
As an example, I think all of Region 7, Southeast Montana, if I remember right, I have to go read the elk management plan again. It's almost 20 years old now, but I think the objective for that unit is 300 or 500 elk. And it's geographically, it's huge. I don't know how many millions of acres it is. Well, guess what? When you got an area that big and your objective is 300 or 500, it's not that hard to be over objective. And so we have all these places in Montana where they say, oh, we're over objective. Well, if we're not over objective, that means we should almost close the season, because after the politicians got done setting the objectives in the elk management plan, they'd be borderline extinct if they were under objective. And so we've decided we're going to come up with this creative thing called shoulder seasons. Because we have too many elk in Montana. They said they want to reduce our elk numbers by 45,000 elk. That's what it would take to get to these low objectives they have set.
Wow.
So, yeah. So if you don't shoot your elk in Montana, it's either because you made the conscious decision that I'm not going to shoot one, or you just stayed in the bar all winter. And, it's so I'm kind of down on that. And now that we're expanding it to public land, the commission met, and I think there were over 300 comments against it, and there were 2 comments in favor of it. And the commission voted 4-1 to do it.
Oh, they represent the public, right?
Yeah. And here's what we know based on having done this before. The Madison Valley, which is south of Ennis, Montana, in the mid 2000s, or 15, 16 years ago, they said we had way too many elk there, and they're living under these center irrigation pivots and blah, blah, blah. We got to kill a bunch of cow elk. All right. So at the time, we issued a whole bunch of cow antlerless tags, cow elk tags, where if you drove through Ennis, there's a stop sign there. I think that in order to proceed past the stop sign, you had to, there was someone there handing out cow tags. We gave away so many of them. You a tourist? Yeah. Oh, here's a cow tag. But here's what happened. The migratory elk that come from the upper Gallatin range migrate over into the Madison to winter. Well, we get a couple good storms in mid-December, and these migratory elk, the well-behaved elk that don't live under the pivots, don't live on these sanctuary ranches, come walking off the mountain, strolling around in the foothills, and guess which elk got shot? Those elk. So we shot the living heck out of the well-behaved migratory public land elk, and we didn't shoot any of the poorly behaved center pivot irrigation, the alfalfa elk, because they know where the sanctuaries are. The elk that came off the national forest, they don't know where the safe spots are. Well, most hunters didn't have access to those big sanctuary ranches, so they had a cow tag. They're like, boom, boom. And within 2 years, with the collaring that we had, our department said, whoa, wait a second. It looks like we're shooting the wrong elk. So they did close the season and stop that program. And most of those people are now retired. They'll say, look, we made a mistake there. And now the upper Gallatin herd that used to winter 1,300 to 1,600 elk, or not winter, had 1,300 to 1,600 elk, now is a herd of about 400 to 500. It's never recovered from that session of 2 years of shooting all these migratory elk that weren't the problem elk. So our new commission has decided, if it was a bad idea that failed in 2005 and 2006, let's do it now and let's put our foot on the gas. The reason it didn't work is we didn't try hard enough.
We didn't accelerate the bad idea.
It's I could go on and on, but anyhow, I appreciate all the Montana hunters who've been speaking out against the expansion of shoulder seasons to public land. That's I know they're all saying, well, what good did it do? When you have 150 plus comments against for every one comment for, and they still vote the other way, what do you do? I don't have the answer to the what do you do part yet, but I'm working on that. So, hey, how did I get on? Here we go again, Corey. I need to have like a tracking system to say, all right, here's the path we turned off from, and we went down this side road, so I know how to get back to the main road.
We were just talking about seasons closing, September being gone, seasons closing, and Montana being the state that just doesn't close their season. Yeah.
So it is what it is. We're going right now. I'd say we're done with the peak rut, and we're going to the post rut, and that's why I think most states can have such huge amount of hunting pressure in rifle season in late October. It's the post rut, and that's the hardest time there is to kill an elk.
I was just going to say, the minute those big bulls quit bugling and move off by themselves is, I went out, Idaho opens October 15th, so I went out for opening day. I spent 2.5 days scouting before opening day. Went out opening day, and did not see an elk and did not see a fresh track. So it was, it's just tough. And I carried my bugle the whole time and was hoping to get an elk to bugle. But like I said, I haven't heard an elk bugle since about October 8th or so. And I've been in places where there were elk and they won't bugle. And I've obviously been in places where there weren't elk and those ones wouldn't bugle either.
Imagine that, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I in Montana, I usually wait till the late season, and we're one of the few states that allow elk hunting in November on a general type. A lot of states have November elk hunts, but it's usually a limited entry draw if you're going to hunt in November in most states. But I do think that if you are able to hunt late season elk, it's the easiest time to kill an elk with a rifle. Well, I mean, if you could hunt them in the rut with a rifle, yeah. But,
late season's far easier than
late season. Yeah. So that's why I kind of wait for that and know that these public land elk are, by the time late season comes around, they are in such tight sanctuaries that you can eliminate 99% of your map and focus on those 1% that are just nasty, ugly sanctuaries that very few people want to go into. And somewhere near there, probably where you're going to find these bulls in November.
Yeah, I was excited because there was 4 or 5 inches of snow up on top. And so I got up there and I covered a ton of country and never crossed a single track in the snow. Other than wolves, I saw there was a pack of wolves that moved through, and one of the biggest wolf tracks I've seen. It was impressive how big it was.
Wow.
So,
did you notice this year? I don't know what the drought was like in Idaho, but in Montana, we had a really, really, this is the driest year in I don't know how long, but a long time. The elk were down really low this year. And I attribute that to a function of that's where the better food was. So that's where the cows were. And if that's where the cows were, that's where the bulls were going to go in September.
Yeah.
But we would go up high. Nothing. Go down low. Be bulls. Bugling here, bugling there. I don't know. But maybe it's because I spent so much time down low, because there's a heck of a grouse crop this year in Montana, and they were mostly down low. So maybe that's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm starting to see the picture here. Elk are bugling all over while you have a moose tag in your pocket, and you're not chasing them. They probably were bugling all over when you had an elk tag in your pocket, but there was grouse there distracting you. So.
There's a very good chance of that. Boy, I whacked a bunch of them this year. I made up for some lost time.
Are we going to get to see any grouse hunting during Destination Elk?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
You should. There's a couple clips where I actually had the editors throw them away. I'm like, look, I'm jumping up and down, acting like a 2-year-old here. Please throw that clip out. If that hits the public domain, any respect people have for me is gone. I mean, I already don't have much. People are like, oh, that guy's an idiot anyhow. But boy, I didn't realize I got that excited, but I did. And then I shot one grouse. I blood trailed him for the longest time. Never did catch up to him.
Really?
But, yeah, I was so disappointed.
Man, you didn't tell your wife about that, did you?
I haven't yet.
Yeah,
no.
I know how she'll react if you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you guys have a great grouse crop in Idaho this year?
We did.
Always have a great grouse crop.
Yeah, it wasn't as good this year. It was. There were a few. In fact, I saw 2 last week heading out, and realized I didn't have a proper weapon to be able to dispatch of them properly. So I left them as a seed crop. And,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And maybe next will be better.
Are,
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Send me the waypoints.
But
you guys, if I remember seeing right, you guys did a hunt of a lifetime thing here earlier in October. Is that right?
We did. Yeah. We, first week of October, we always do the hunt of a lifetime, and we did it through a 501c organization called Outfitters for Hope this year. And, those are, I don't know, I feel like a broken record because I say the same thing every year when we talk about it, but they really are an incredible experience. And, we use it as an opportunity to kind of remind ourselves how blessed we are. And it's always so just refreshing to go and hunt with someone that's going through a tough time, or something that I think we take for granted. We take elk hunting for granted. We take a lot of things for granted. And this year's experience was, it was truly an eye-opening experience to see how much we do take for granted. Jack, the young man who we took out, he had a cancerous brain tumor. And through, the surgery and the chemotherapy, and he suffered a stroke as he was going through the treatment. And so he's I say basically blind, but he is by all accounts and purposes blind. He can see your hand. If you hold it about 5 or 6 inches in front of his face, he can tell that there's a hand in front of his face. But if you hold it 3 feet in front of him, he can't see anything there at all. So, we were, and he can't, his mobility is very limited due to the stroke. So we were, there's a lot of challenge. I was looking at it going, wait a minute, how are we going to, we can't get him around hardly at all. He's a bigger kid. He's 6 foot tall and 165 pounds. So some of the smaller kids we've thrown on our back and piggybacked him around, and we were, knew we were going to have a challenge here. And then it came down to Donnie took him to the shooting range to shoot the rifle, and the first, I want to say 10 shots at 25 feet, shooting at a 24-inch target, he didn't hit the target. Wow. And so we're looking at it going, okay, this could set us up for a really bad experience if we wound an animal. What are we going to do here? So Donnie, being the great researcher he is, he found an adapter that goes on the front or the back of the scope, and it basically mirrors the image at a 90-degree angle. So you're still looking through the scope and can see the reticles and the target there in the scope, but then a helper on the side at 90 degrees can look and verify to make sure that they're on target. So he rigged that up and went back to the shooting range, and Jack shot considerably better. So we got out to camp and shot the gun and had, Russ Meyer, Tony Mudd, Tony Gilbertson, Donnie, John, and myself, and then Joe McCarthy was there, volunteered at the last minute to cook, and then Jack and his stepfather Jeremy were there. So we set up and shot a couple of practice rounds, and it worked really, really good. So the next challenge is, okay, how do we find an elk that's close enough to the ATV that we can get Jack to it? Get the elk in close enough, because we kind of set our limit of no more than 100 yards because of the visual limitations there, and we just knew that we were up against a pretty tall order. But those hunts every year work out, and every year there's different challenges. And the first 36 hours we didn't hear an elk bugle. We were having troubles finding elk, and so we looked on the map and said, okay, if they're getting pressured here and they're getting pressured here, here's where they're going to move to. And we went there the second evening, and sure enough, that seemed like where all the elk were. We saw 3 herds that had herd bulls pushing cows, and obviously we weren't able to get in anywhere close to them, but we rode the side-by-sides up, and Jack hiked probably 400 yards up the mountain, which, he was a trooper. He's got his sight stick there and using it to feel for rocks in front of him, and he's his stepdad's holding his hand, walking him up the hill, kind of guiding him around brush and rocks and obstacles. And we got up to a little draw and got kind of set up there and had no idea if there were any elk left around there. And I let out a bugle and a bull answered 300 yards away. And he stepped out of the trees and was looking for us. And I cow called a couple times and he came at a dead run. And you're going to have to, I mean, we got it all on video. You're going to have to see how it all played out. But it was nearly miraculous. Just the way the bull came in, where he came in, how long he stood there, how efficient Tony and Russ were at getting Jack turned around and set up and on the target. And Jack made a perfect shot, and the bull went about 5 yards and fell down, and it was pretty awesome. But so many times during that hunt, the aspens were absolutely incredible. Like just can't even explain visually what it was like. Whole mountain just covered with yellow and orange and red aspens. And it just looked like the hillside was on fire. And I'm looking at it, and I usually take things like that for granted. Like, yeah, they change colors every year. I've seen them for 46 years now. But Jack standing there next to you and knowing he can't see more than 6 inches in front of him, I think we paused a little longer and soaked that in. And then walking up on the elk, when he had shot at it, it ran the 5 yards and kind of fell against a mahogany tree. And as we're walking up there, he's super excited. I want to see it. I want to go up. I want to go up to my elk. Can I go up to my elk? And so I'm holding his hand on one side, his stepdad's on the other side, and we're walking him up there, and we're kind of explaining to him, it's laying up against a tree here, and it's a beautiful bull, an old bull. And we get up there, and he says, "Oh, wow, it's way bigger than I thought." Well, he sees the tree that it's laying up against and thinks that's the elk. And so we explained to him, no, that's the tree. The elk's laying underneath it. So we get up to the tree, and we're kind of making sure he doesn't poke his eye out on the limbs as he's going down there. And he reaches down and grabs a hold of the tree, and he says, "Wow, the antlers are really rough." And we're like, "No, that's the tree it's laying up against. It's down here." So we're guiding his hands in on the antlers so he can feel them. And so he feels them, and he's like, "Oh, wow, these are really smooth and so cool." And then he reaches down and feels the face of the elk, and he's kind of feeling the hair, and goes down the nose, and he touches the nose of it, and he pulls his hand back really quick. He's like, "Oh my gosh, what was that?" And we're like, "That was the nose, and you've got an elk booger on your hand." So he starts flinging his hand, and so just we had a lot of fun, but at the same time, I'm just standing there going, we are so blessed that, we not only can see the elk, but when we walk up on it, we're able to take it in visually, and he couldn't do that. And, his bull was an old bull. It only had one ivory. The one ivory was completely wore down flat. So I cut it out and took it up to it and put it in his hands and explained to him what it was. And so he's feeling it, and he's like, "Wow, this is really smooth and cool." And just so many things that we wake up every morning and don't even think about, that these experiences are so just incredible to be a part of for so many reasons.
Yeah, it's amazing. And just hearing you talk about it, Corey, is it kind of leaves you with this heavy heart of, the concern or just empathy for everybody who doesn't have the blessings of health that we have, and really remarkable that all of you guys get together and do this every year.
I was just going to say, after the first year, it became selfish on our part, because I wouldn't miss it for anything now, just because of the experience. I mean, you can look at it and say we sacrificed a week of our time, but we didn't. We gained so much more than what we gave up, and obviously we still get to be out hunting elk, so it's not much of a sacrifice anyway. But we just we gain so much from it that it's a once in a lifetime type of a thing for a lot of people, and for us, we get to do it every year, and it really is life changing. It changes the way that even in my own hunts, knowing that I have that coming up, I'm reminded many times of the hardships they're going through. And my hardship is, I can't hear an elk bugle this morning, and I'm getting frustrated about it. And it just gives me a good chance to realign my priorities and recount the blessings I have. And don't get me wrong, I still get frustrated and still whine about things. But just seeing Jack, I mean, he's a freshman in high school. He goes to regular high school. He's a straight A student. He never once complained about anything out there. Like, didn't get frustrated that he couldn't see anything, was very patient, asking for people to explain things to him or to help him, get over to a place where he needed to get. Just always had a smile. And I mean, to see him light up the next morning at camp, recounting the hunt, and it's incredible.
Wow. That is so remarkable. The one thing you just wish that every person with some sort of impairment or other condition could experience it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And I wish that everybody like us that thinks we have it bad could experience going out and being a part of that, because it really is just. I don't know. It's hard to put into words and explain it, but it's powerful for sure.
Yeah. Well, how did the Jacobson household hunts go this year? Every year we get a good report that, my daughter this, my son this.
It was good. I think the last time we talked. When was the last time we talked? It was it the Alaska podcast?
Yeah, the last podcast. So you'd get back from Alaska, and then I was launching for some Montana elk and moose hunting. So.
And had I gotten back from our Idaho hunt at that point?
I can't remember.
I don't think so. So John and Donnie and I headed over to a new unit and had an incredible time there, filled with all sorts of challenges and everything. But Donnie filled his tag the first night, and we got John a tag, and cameraman John shot an absolute giant of a bull. And then I had a few days left to hunt, and we weren't as fortunate. And on our last evening there, Donnie broke his leg. And
what?
Yeah, we
broke his leg.
Broke his leg.
Like in a cast now?
Not yet, but he has to go back in for follow-up X-rays. He broke it in 2 places.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I'll spare a lot of the details. Hopefully, we can share a lot of that in Destination Elk, because we filmed everything. But he's been having knee problems. He had all his problems in Alaska. We hunted pretty hard. We rode motorcycles into an area. It was a pretty tough motorcycle ride. Packing elk out on a motorcycle wasn't a lot of fun and wasn't easy. So Donnie was pretty wore down towards the end of the hunt. And I was in what Donnie and John call last day marathon mode. And, I just kind of, that last day, it's like, hey, we've got to go above and beyond here. And Donnie knew it was coming. So John volunteered to stick with me, and Donnie volunteered to go back and get the truck and drive around the mountain 13 or 14 miles and pick us up on the other side when we popped out. And fortunately, it was the only day of the whole hunt where we had cell reception. We were hunting on the face of the mountain there, and Donnie called about a half hour after we split up and said, hey, I fell and hurt my knee. Well, his knee's been bothering him for 2 years, and so I thought, I probably twisted his knee or something. And I said, all right, do you need us to come to you? And he said, no, let me kind of sit here for a minute and gather my bearings and see if I can put weight on it and keep going where you're going. I'll call you. And I said, well, I'm not going to keep hiking away from you. If I'll wait here till I hear back. And about 2 minutes later, he called and said, I can't put any weight on it. I can't even stand up. There's something wrong. So we headed to him and made it over to him, and he was in pretty bad shape. And so, talking about, going through with him, it was on flat ground. He kind of kicked a pine cone or something and lost his footing and went to catch himself. And when he did, his knee completely bent backwards. And so I'm thinking, all right, you blew out your ACL or something. And then he said, it hurts the worst on the sides, on the front left side and the front right side. And I thought, well, maybe it's MCL or another of the outside stabilizing ligaments there. And so we're thinking ligament the whole time. So we got him, fixed up with trekking poles and able to get up and shuffle him out. There was about 1.25 miles to where we could get the truck to. He had to hike out on that. And so we get back, and he went in to get the MRI and everything, and nothing was torn. They said, ligaments are definitely stretched out, which is why it feels like your knee has no support and it's going to lock up again, but let's do an x-ray. So they did an x-ray and found that he fractured 2 different bones in his lower leg. And my only thought is he hit so hard, and fortunately the ligaments didn't give way, but it looks like where the ligaments attached to the bone, that it fractured the bone there at the top of the bone. So he's in a no weight bearing mode for 3 weeks with a brace on it, and then he has to go back in and get x-ray again and then decide what they're going to do from there.
This getting old ain't for sissies, Lord. No. I'm telling you. No. Corey.
It isn't.
There's a guy here. He just passed away in Bozeman, Joe Gutkoski. He was 91. And just a remarkable guy, former smoke jumper, everything. He used to go up in the wilderness area here, the Spanish Peaks, and spend elk season with nothing more than a tarp. And that's how he'd go up there. That's all he'd carry. And you'd say, Joe, how do you make it? Well, what am I going to do if I were to shoot an elk and I had all that stuff on my back? It'd take more trips. And he just passed away. But when I used to talk to him, and towards when he got in his 80s, he'd tell you about this ache or this pain or how it was slowing down his elk hunting. And here he is, 85 years old, backpack elk hunting in the wilderness area. And he's the one who told me, Randy, this getting old ain't for sissies. So I stole that one from Joe Gutkoski. What a great guy. But,
yeah.
How old is Donnie? Can you rat out Donnie? How old is he? Is he older than you or younger?
He's older than me. He's 52. So he's about in between you and me, I think.
Yeah. Boy, Donnie, you need to quit hunting with guys like Corey. People may not understand that when I'm with you, you take off running, and I'm like, that's fine. He's running past all these grouse and other stuff. I'm on cleanup duty here. I'm here to get dinner. So I don't put myself in those situations usually where I get hurt. Just because I don't move fast enough to get hurt.
Well, like I told Donnie, we rode motorcycles, I don't know how many miles, through just some rocky, bouldery, nasty stuff. In fact, at one point, Donnie stopped and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he's like, "I'm good." He goes, "Why didn't we do this when we were younger?" And it's tough. And we were we had some nasty packouts. We brought his elk out in one trip. We brought John's elk out in one trip, and John's was a giant herd bull. And all these places, we had no cell reception. We had nothing other than an in-reach and an SOS button. And he could have got hurt in any of those areas. He got hurt on flat ground 1.25 miles from the truck with cell reception. And so we were very fortunate in that regard for sure.
Yeah.
But
they say that the most backcountry injuries happen within 1 mile of camp.
Yeah.
So that's why I moved. That's why
you moved your camp. I'd heard that one before, that they say most auto accidents happen within 10 miles of home, so we moved. And
yeah. So let's expand on this, because we get some questions about this. This is where you and I couldn't be on further ends of the spectrum. Getting an elk out in one trip. I'm just here to tell the world that packing an elk out in one trip is insanity. And I participated in one of those with you down in New Mexico.
Yeah, but there were 4 of us
now
there.
You tell me you get... Well, I know, but 2 of the guys were carrying 60 pounds of camera gear.
And I think they were still carrying more elk than us.
Yeah. I mean, that trip, perfect example. We're walking out in the dark through a boulder field of, well, I wouldn't call it a boulder field. It's like walking on volleyballs.
Yeah.
All those lava rocks. And Marcus carrying the camera already has a drop foot on his right side. He takes a digger, cuts his hand, smashes the viewfinder on the camera. But at least we got the elk out in one load.
That's right.
Or one trip.
And by 2 a.m. too.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After Alaska, things just didn't seem as hard this year. We did more hard things this year.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
There's a big part of why I no longer do the, crazy heavy loads is, with age, it just, where it's even that much harder on you, and your recovery period is way, way longer. But just the risk of injury is, I'm never in that big of a hurry. I'm one of those guys who drives the speed limit. So I'm never in a big hurry. So I'm not going to be in a big hurry with getting the elk out in one trip. But I know a lot of people do that. And I don't know, man. I don't think you're going to be able to convince me to do that, Corey.
Yeah. And last year I kind of had convinced myself, hey, it's time to just start taking 1 quarter at a time and, just easing out a little bit. And of course, the llamas helped with that last year. But this year, so we got back from Alaska and that experience, which I won't even rehash any of that. But we did a lot of packing there. I was home for 2 days and took my then 14, now 15-year-old son, Sam, out, and he shot a really big 6-point bull with his bow. And he had forgot game bags, so I made him hike back to the truck and get the game bags. And he said he got turned around a little bit, but I'm pretty sure he was sitting up on the hill watching me, because just at the time I got completely done cutting up his elk and hanging it in the tree, he showed back up with game bags. So I cut his up by myself, and then we packed it out, and that's when Donnie came and helped us with one of the loads there. Then we head over to eastern Idaho. We brought out...
Was this before Donnie broke his leg?
Yeah, this was before. So this was Donnie's... Okay. Donnie wanted to be involved in the pack out, just having missed Alaska and everything. So we headed over for our Idaho hunt. Donnie shot his bull first night. We packed it out in one trip, which it wasn't a brutal trip. It was, I want to say, 1.5 miles. We were in a creek bottom. We were able to get up off the side and find a pretty good game trail, and it was a pretty gradual downhill pack. And it wasn't, we boned it. Did we bone it out? I don't remember. I don't think we boned his out. But anyway, it didn't seem overly heavy. John had the heaviest load on that one with camera gear, and then he took pretty good chunk of meat with him. John's bull, we shot it, and it was about the same distance, 1.5 miles or so, but it was down pretty steep, a lot of blowdowns, and we were looking at it going, somebody's gonna have to come back and get another quarter, and I just said, throw it on my pack and let's be done. So I had a pretty heavy load on that one. We got back home, and I was, I didn't fill my tag, and there were still days left in the season. And I don't know if it was the random bursts of tears or just the staring longingly out the window of our home. My wife finally said, just go back. And so I went back over, 6-hour drive, the night before season closed, got there just before dark, spotted a bull about 2 miles away, and looked like a giant bull, the biggest bull we'd seen all season. But I wanted to call one in up where I was. I was up on top of the mountain, and I spent the next day, I hiked 13 miles the next day. I never heard a bugle and never saw an elk. And that was the last day of the season. And so in the back of my mind, I thought, I've got to get over where I saw that bull. So with about an hour and a half left of daylight, I headed over to where I'd seen the bull the night before, and just hoped that he would take the same route going down to water that he'd taken the night before, because they weren't talking, and I wasn't about to bugle and make them wary and send them another direction. So hiking up the ridge to get up to the point where I'd seen him come out of the timber, and it was starting to get not dark, but I knew it was late enough in the evening that I was taking a risk of bumping him if I tried going any farther. So I just picked a spot along the trail he had taken the night before and set up there, hoping he'd come down that same way. And as luck would have it, he didn't take the same path. He ended up circling around on a adjacent ridge. But then, for whatever reason, the cows he was with decided to cross back over to the ridge I was on, and they crossed over 12 yards away from where I was set up and pulled the bull with them. So with 23 minutes left in the season, I shot the biggest bull that I've shot in Idaho in my life. And I was by myself. John had other obligations. Donnie had a broken leg. And so I processed it there in the field that night by myself, and then packed it out by myself the next day. And I almost got it in 2 trips.
Jeez.
But I went back to get the last load, which was the back straps, tenderloins, the head, the antlers, and both hindquarters, and I couldn't lift the pack off the ground. So I took one of the hindquarters off and had to make a 3rd trip to get it. But did that, and then got back, did the hunt of a lifetime, and got Jack's bull. And then my oldest son, Isaac, who's at college, came home on a Friday night and was heading down to Boise to a wedding the next day, and had to be back at 10 o'clock. And so it was 11 o'clock at night or so, and we're just sitting in the living room talking. And I said, we should go out and look for a spike for you in the morning, because Idaho has a rifle spike hunt that's open for, I think, 9 days or something in between archery and rifle season. And he's like, can I do that? And I'm like, yeah, it's part of your A tag is you have the spike only season that's open right now. And he's like, I won't have enough time. I have to be back home by 9:45 to shower and get ready to leave by 10. And I'm like, well, that gives us a good 2 hours. We can at least go out and see. And he said, well, if we get one, what if we get one like when we have to get back? I'm like, we'll worry about that then. If, we go out and you have an opportunity, that's great. If not, we at least we're out hunting. And so we went out, took a little hike, didn't hear any bugles, didn't see any elk, and got back to the truck. And I said, well, we've got an hour. Gives us enough time to drive over through the logging area and then take the back way back home and be home. And he's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, it's 45 minutes if we leave right now. And he's like, all right. So we drive through the logging area. And Isaac's the one that I've always mentioned has the lucky horseshoe implanted in somewhere in his body. And heard an elk run across the road with a spike in the back of the herd. So he jumps out and runs up the hill, and I hear boom, boom, boom. And I run up there just in time to see a spike rock back on its back heels and fall over backwards. And I looked at my watch and thought, oh, we're pushing it here. So we ran up there and took a few pictures of it, and ran back to the truck, and I drove him home. He got home with 5 minutes to spare, and then I went back out and took care of his elk and packed it out for him, which it was only, 400 yards or so, so it wasn't a bad pack. But that's been my season. We've packed a handful of elk.
Let me ask you this: does this mean you're just really in good practice at packing out animals, or have you had your fill of it for the year?
You
got in on a lot of packouts this year.
I did, yeah, and a couple of them by myself, and I'm ready to do it again. I would do it again.
Really?
And I may have to, because my daughter Jessie, she's hardcore and wants to kill an elk, but on Saturday she tore her other ACL. So she tore her right knee, ACL in her right knee 10 months ago in her first basketball game of the season last year, and rehabbed from that and came back stronger than ever. And in their first district volleyball game, she tore her other ACL. So she's immobile, but we've got the Baku e-bikes and a trailer that I've hauled her around in before. So I'm going to try to do some scouting, see if I can find an elk somewhat close to a logging road or something, and bike her back in the trailer if I have to.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I wish I had as many packout stories to talk about as you do, but I don't.
What any updates on the moose? I know last time you were heading back out to look for a moose.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. This thing called life sometimes gets in the way. I went up. Me and Michael were doing some archery elk hunting up at my moose unit. That we promised you that we'd get you some elk content from Montana for your Destination Elk series. So that's why I called you that one day and said, Corey, there's an elk bugling right out here 50 yards in front of us, but it's so thick I can't see him. What do I do? He said, hang up the phone. Don't call me.
I think we've got that's in our intro of the podcast of me saying not to call me to ask for advice while an elk's bugling in front of you.
That's why I did it.
I know.
Actually, the bull had already kind of drifted off. He must have caught our wind or something. But anyhow, we were up there doing that. And, we chase bugles in the morning, and then in the afternoon just go and mess around, act like we're moose hunting, but not get real serious about it. And then the third night, a bull, about a 35-inch bull, walked down below our camp about 400 yards. And I called him to within 100 yards, and I didn't shoot him. In retrospect, it's like that was a mistake. And then I took a little break and went to Wyoming to help my buddy Mason Payer from Nosler hunt his pronghorn tag. I didn't have a tag. I love chasing pronghorn, so I offered to join him. And while I was down there, I got a bad phone call that my mom was diagnosed with a really aggressive form of cancer. So they were immediately going to start a bunch of procedures. And I called her. I said, well, I'm coming back. She said, well, don't you have a moose tag? I'm like, yeah. She said, well, don't come back until you fill that moose tag. So I called her while I was out in the field trying to fill the moose tag. And so, when you get a diagnosis, there's all these tests, and then they finally figure out what the treatment's going to be. So I'm out in my moose unit and call her. I'm like, well, what'd you find out? And she gives me the whole calendar. I'm like, okay, I'm going to pack up and head home. And that's when she said, no, make sure you shoot a moose before you do. So the next morning, there's a moose standing in the river. And I start giving my calls, and he's like, oh boy, what's over there? I got to come check this out. So I'm sitting there with my 7mm 08. And he walks up to, I think my first shot I could have taken, if I wanted to shoot through the brush, was like 15 yards. I don't have my bow with me.
Oh.
And then he jogs, or he moves around. And I couldn't shoot through all the thick brush, so we made a loop ahead of him. And he comes walking right up on top of this bench where I'm embarrassed to say, not really. He must have wanted a ride in my truck, because he starts walking right towards my truck that's parked over on the Forest Service road. And I shot him at about 25 yards. I could have got him out whole. I've never got an elk out whole, but I could have got that moose out whole. I could have taken my worn winch and just winched him the extra 80 yards to the truck.
Wow.
I mean, with the photographs, by the time we made this big loop to get in front of him, we had to take photographs from a certain angle so the truck wasn't in the background.
There is nothing wrong with that. That's nothing to be embarrassed about.
No, so he's a young 2.5-year-old bull, but I knew I had to get on an airplane and get back to Minnesota. So that's how the moose hunt went, and that's part of why you and I have had a hard time connecting. I just got back from Minnesota the other Sunday night, and now I got to leave town in the morning, and I'm pretty much done. My season is kind of on the shelf. With the exception of my mom and my siblings, who were all rotating, helping her. And they all said, look, you got a mountain goat tag. You're going back out to Montana in November, and you're going to fill that mountain goat tag. I said, well, I'll go back there. Don't bet that I'll fill it. But but here's the other part of that. This is like the repeating story. So everyone knows my mountain goat and moose tag were in the same unit. So while we're up there moose hunting, I'd seen this big billy goat 3 years ago, and that's why I started applying there. I went up there, and I found him 4 more times this month, or in late September and early October. I could have shot him, but I didn't, because before I found out my mom's situation, I'm like, oh, he's still tucked away in this little spot. Nobody would ever look for a mountain goat here. Here he is. I'm coming back in November when he's all furred out. So if some other tag holder finds him and shoots him, I'm probably going to be kicking the dirt.
You'll find him.
So I hope so. Anyhow, that's, not to share the woe is me kind of thing in the world, but I think anyone whose family's been through a cancer diagnosis that is bad, they know what the situation is, and you deal with it. Like you were talking about when you guys did the hunt of a lifetime with Jack, how it kind of makes you so aware of how blessed we are, and this whole thing of the last 2 or 3 weeks here is really shaken. It just kind of tilts your view of the world and forces you to look at things a little differently. And for me, it's, just, I almost have this feeling of guilt of how many times I've seen a family where you can tell someone's going through chemo and other stuff. And I feel bad that I wasn't as compassionate as maybe I should have been for trying to consider what that family was going through at the time. But now I fully understand, and it just causes me to look at things and say, you know what? No matter who you are, hug your wife, hug your mom, because you never know when the phone call is going to come. Not that you live life worrying about that, but don't take it for granted. That's for sure. So. That's
good advice, and I'm sorry to hear that she's going through that.
Yeah, it's and that's at first it's this huge upheaval, but then you just realize that this thing we call life, it just there's no set path. You don't know what tomorrow holds or what this afternoon holds, and but every one of these things are lessons. I mean, to see my mom show the courage that she is showing is just remarkable. I mean, she's always been a very, very amazing woman, but she's the first day of treatments when we're in Duluth. She looks at me and she says, after they tell you all this stuff of what you're going to go through. I don't know if they're trying to scare you out of it, but it's like, oh my gosh. We get out of there and she's like, I'm ready. Let's go before I change my mind. So we march into the clinic there where she gets her infusions. And so it's as hard as those things are, and you don't want to ever see anyone go through it. You know, some of the lessons for me are pretty profound. If I got an ache in my back, or I got a toothache or whatever, it's like, Randy, you aren't dealing with anything. Suck it up, buttercup. I think examples of courage and examples of dealing with life and trying to make the best of bad. Those are things that make us, in the long run, probably make us a better person. So that's what we'll try with this, and we'll know probably by December. We'll know how well the treatments are working and go from there. So if people are watching our platforms, I mean, there's already, you read. YouTube is not a good place to read comments. It's not as bad as Facebook, but it's close. So, right now Marcus and Michael and some of our other friends have been out hunting, so I haven't been on the channel a lot for the last month. And people are like, "Where's Randy? Where's Randy?" And so it's like, you don't want to tell the whole world, because then it sounds like you're, wanting the woe is me story. But if they think they haven't seen much of me so far this year, they're really going to be asking that question for the rest of the year. But here's what it is. We'll get through it. And I got a moose. And have you ever tried to cook a whole rack of moose ribs?
I have not. Did you?
So, well, we thought about it. Our tradition always is, and this was the last night. We shot it in the afternoon, right around noon. By the time you get, even if it is close to the road, by the time you process a moose, it takes a long time. So we had rented this Forest Service cabin, and so that night, I know I'm heading out the next morning. We cooked the tenderloin, and then we thought we were going to cook a rack of the ribs. But we cooked a half rack of those ribs on an open fire. And then some of these images we have of Marcus chewing on just one moose rib, it's like 30 inches long. And it's about as big around as the handle on a baseball bat. And here's Marcus holding on to this thing. Let's just say our eyeballs got ahead of our stomachs that night. By the time we ate that one big tenderloin, and then we tried to eat that half rack of ribs, we ended up having to scrape not most, but a lot of the meat off the ribs and then take it home. And Marcus did something with it when he got home.
That's the way to do it.
Meat on their ribs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's the way to do it. Shoot them by the truck so you can take the whole rib home, and because usually it's wanting to cut ribs and pack ribs and everything out of the woods. So that's right. And if you look at the meat that's on an elk on their ribs, and I've taken elk ribs before, you don't get that much meat off an elk rib. A moose rib, if you eat a quarter of a rack of moose ribs, you're going to be plenty full. You're going to have a protein overload that day. So it was fun. It didn't turn out like I thought. I thought I was going to get to moose hunt for another 3 weeks. I blocked out most of October because the rut really starts peaking the first 10 days of October. But is what it is. So I guess I should have shot that, bigger bull that was close, came by our camp there while we were out hunting, but I didn't. And so that's just how it goes. So now I'm going to go take care of business and then come back and hopefully find a mountain goat and see if we have a story to tell about that. I can't wait for that one.
A story about, yeah, look at this gut pile right here. Someone must have shot Grubby.
No, he's being preserved right there waiting for you.
Oh, I hope you're right, Corey. Yeah. It would be fun if we could find him. But that has nothing to do with elk hunting.
No. But elk season, it does have to do with elk season.
Yeah, it does. And when Michael and I were doing our elk hunting, like I said, we hunted down low because we were doing all the high ridge stuff, get up on the ridges and bugle and nothing. And a lot of times we'd be down walking from the trailhead where we parked the truck, and we'd hear a faint bugle down lower, and we just said, oh, those are other hunters. We got to go higher. Well, then one morning we slammed the truck door, the topper lid or whatever, and all of a sudden a bull bugles 500 yards from us. We're like, wait a second, it's an hour before daylight. That's not another hunter. So we went after it. And again, you know how thick it is there. You and I have hunted there before. And you think we could get those things into archery range? I need to work on my talent. But they'd come in and they would just get so close. You could hear them walking. The bugles, the vibration of them bugling that close was so intense. But you get in those little low spots in there and where they like to go down. And the wind I wasn't good enough to figure out how to get a steady wind. And I think they would just circle around enough that they'd get a little whiff of something and they'd be like, something just isn't right. We never heard the alarm bark or anything like that. You wouldn't hear them running off. You just hear them, all of a sudden they go silent for 5 minutes and then they're 300 yards away. And, but I think that's how they get to be old bulls in that country. There's tons of grizzly bears, tons of wolves, and a lot of hunters. And the ones that make it are smart. And I'm on the other end of the elk smart spectrum from them, so the odds aren't that good for me. So somebody wrote in and asked how to hunt thick areas of western Montana or northern Idaho. And I don't really have an answer because I just explained that I haven't figured it out. If it was rifle season, I'd say go hunt somewhere else. Because if they're not bugling, boy, I don't know how I would hunt elk where we were at if they weren't bugling. Because your visibility, it's good visibility if you can see 30 yards. Most places it's 10 to 15 yards. Yeah. So I don't know how you would do that. I would just say make sure you archery hunt it. Don't rifle.
And I think
any tips for?
Yeah, growing up in north central Idaho and seeing some of that stuff in northwestern Montana, if I was to rifle hunt it, I think I would definitely. And I think this is assuming based on what I've seen, but there's usually some logging areas and some areas you can hike into where they've been logged, whether it's clear cut or just thinned or whatever. But you've got to find an open spot. And I think the elk, they like those spots too. They like coming out of that thick stuff and being able to get out and breathe a little bit and find some good feed. So that would be my advice if I was hunting in that thick area, is find an area where it's been logged or where there's been a fire or something that's disrupted that thick canopy of brush that permeates a lot of North Idaho and Northwest Montana and do some glassing there. Still hunting through that stuff is well, I was going to say it's a patience learning effort, but it's probably a waste of time. So, in archery season, that's how I grew up hunting, was in that thick stuff. And I actually prefer hunting where I can't see the elk because they can't see me. And I think it gives me more opportunity to get on a ridge and hike and get a bugle and get down and have an encounter. So like you said, archery hunting wouldn't be too bad if they're bugling. If they aren't bugling, then you've got to resort to some of the same things, either getting out and looking for them at last light as they're coming out to feed on the edge of a clear cut, or find a game trail and try to ambush them as they're coming by or over a water hole or something. But I wouldn't completely relocate in rifle season. I just look for some of those areas that might be a little more conducive to being able to glass. Yeah.
Yeah. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek. I have hunted elk up in this spot where I told you how thick it is. Actually, the first 5 bull elk I shot up in there. And I'll use other parts of this area of Montana is we have a lot of edges where on a certain side of the ridge there's timber and then it's clear, it's grass on the other side. So we have a lot of openings from fire, from just the natural vegetation. This part of Montana, we have a lot of openings. So knowing that elk use edges, a lot of times you're sitting there saying, well, which of these 100 edges are they going to use today? Whereas in the really thick parts where I've hunted, there aren't very many edges. So the edges that are there become even more valuable to the elk and therefore more value to your strategy of how you're going to go after them.
Yeah.
So I've used those edge things, whether it's a logging area or just a rock slide that, there's no there's no trees or anything growing in that avalanche chute or that rock slide or, whatever it might be, a burn. And so I'd say pretty much every elk I've shot in that area was on an edge situation, even though there aren't a lot of edges there. So that's, I guess that's how we'd answer that then, and find edges. So one thing I wrote down here, Corey, I'm sorry, I keep looking at this thing where I wrote down, but our friends at Mountain Ops wanted people to know they had something special going on in October.
That is right.
Did I miss that? And I apologize that folks are only finding out about it now, but we've been trying to get together for a podcast, but due to the unforeseen parts of my life the last 3 weeks, we haven't been able to do it. So I apologize that we haven't told folks about this sooner.
Yeah, and they're going to be interested for sure. So Mountain Ops during the month of October, they have their they call it Ops-tober. It's their big annual promotion, I guess. And so they give away a ton of gear and items. So over $125,000 in prizes are up for grabs during October. Yeah. So every single package that's sent out, so every order, they include a golden ticket card in that order. And some of them are for free gear. Some of them are for big discounts, 50% off something, different things. And then each week they randomly select one order and it receives their weekly ops box. And so some of the stuff they've given away, they gave away an ATV, they gave away a dirt bike. This week they're giving away a Kawasaki KL650 Enduro dirt bike. Next week they haven't. Yeah, they haven't announced what they're giving away next week. But basically, if you order Sunday through Saturday, you're automatically entered for that. They have a bunch of other random prizes. But what's really cool is I talked to Rihanna at Mountain Ops and said, well, can we do anything special above and beyond that for the Elk Talk listeners? And she said, yeah, absolutely. And so I was thinking, maybe she'd give us a code that they could use for free shipping or something. If our listeners use the promo code Elk Talk, when they place an order at Mountain Ops, not only are they entered for all of that, they're going to save 30% and get free shipping. So 30% off, free shipping, plus the free items that come with every order, plus the opportunity to win some more cool stuff. So definitely take advantage of that before October 31st. And cool stuff going on over at Mountain Ops for sure.
Man, that is a lot of stuff.
One more thing. Bugleberry is only available during September, so that's gone. But they have another flavor that is a close second to Bugleberry for me, and that is their Mayan Mango, and it's only available during October. So as long as that's still in stock during October, you can also get the Mayan Mango flavor.
Well, I'm a guy who dried mangoes are my go-to trail mix fruit, and I need to call them up.
Yep.
Hey, Can I use promo code Elk Talk? They'll be like, Randy, come on. That's an awful lot of stuff in a giveaway. Anyone who's interested, it'll be late October and it'll run through all of November, first part of December. Every year I do they call it the Win a Hunt with Randy thing with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And that'll start rolling out here sometime in late October. So if you go to rmef.org or watch on our social channels or whatever, and the next podcast will have all the details. But that's another one where we give away, I don't know, $10,000, $12,000 worth of gear on top of the chance for somebody to have to go hang out with me for 5 days. I don't know. I'm waiting for the time when somebody wins this and says, hey, I appreciate the hunt, but I got to hang out with that guy, man. It's not all there.
Anybody that spent more than a couple minutes with you in any camp will be begging for the opportunity. So you keep it fun, that's for sure.
Well, I hope so, but maybe we need to not worry so much about the fun and ramp up the tag punching operation. Because, actually, every last year's sweepstakes winner, he shot his first elk. The guy I'm taking this year, he's never shot an elk, so I'm hoping he shoots his first elk. So we're on a bit of a streak there with sweepstakes winners who have shot their first elk, and quite honestly, I get way more fun out of helping somebody shoot their first elk than if I shoot an elk myself. So
absolutely,
it's always fun to do it that way. But a couple other questions that people sent in. Someone asked how we feel about the idea of states or nonprofit groups encouraging people to hold out for older, mature bulls and not shoot raghorns or younger bulls, and especially on high demand tags. I think the person means well. They're interested in how you can increase the age class, but for me, I've always said, and people get tired of me saying it, I'm sure, is the beauty of hunting is the tag holder gets to decide what they want to make of their hunt. And if they want to shoot a spike, a raghorn, a 5-point, or big hank, doesn't matter to me. I want them to do what they want to do. So I don't know that we'd be able to stockpile elk anyhow, without significantly reducing opportunity. So I'm not sure I'd be on board with that idea.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think most of the over-the-counter states, especially, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, Oregon, I think they are mostly managed for opportunity. And when you start restricting based on antler size or other things, opportunity goes away. And then you're left with, there's no doubt. If you don't kill any spikes, if you don't kill any 4-points, raghorns, and it's a 6-point or better, you're going to have a more quality trophy type experience at the expense of not as many tags. And, you look at it and say, okay, if we did that, there would be just as many bulls, and they'd all be bigger now, but that's not the case. You've got, for an elk to survive to 8 years old, he has to live for 8 years. And there's a lot more than just hunting that he's up against. And so you'd lose some through predation, through winters, through disease, all of that. So you wouldn't have the same number. So you'd lose opportunity there. The other thing is it creates a trophy hunting mindset, which, there's nothing wrong with trophy hunting. I will hold out for a big bull in certain situations, and if I draw a limited tag, but I think that's what it becomes, is all of a sudden it becomes a limited hunt instead of an opportunity. And so I just, like you said, I hate to tell somebody what they have to shoot, especially when it's an opportunity type hunt. We've seen hunts that only allow forked horn mule deer, and it wipes out the older class. I just think where they leave it open, like it is in a lot of these states where it's any bull, it gives the widest range of opportunity to the widest range of hunters, and it promotes people being in the field rather than only hunting a big bull. So like you said, I think the person means well, and it's certainly a good theory, but I don't think it would work out in the long run for what we're trying to manage the elk herds for.
Yeah. Some states, when they found they were having such low bull-to-cow ratios, post-hunt bull-to-cow ratios, they had to go to an antler point restriction just to get more branch antler bulls through the hunting seasons to help with the breeding. So that's why in Colorado, most of your over-the-counter units are 4-point or better.
Yep.
And so that's for a conservation purpose, why they've done that. And less so for personal preference of let's try to stockpile a lot of older age class bulls. It was just they knew that you can't have spikes doing the breeding. We wouldn't go into a whole another discussion of that, but that was in some of the states where it's done for the purposes of the health of the herd.
Yep.
One other person wrote in. Well, oodles of people have written in. I wish we could get to every question, but we'd be doing podcasts about 8 hours a day if we answered every question. But someone wrote in and said, Corey, I've used your University of Elk hunting course. It was very, very helpful, blah, blah, blah. Shot my first elk. Do you have a mule deer course? And I don't know.
That's a great idea.
Up your sleeve, but
that's a great idea. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. And this year, people are like, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say,
I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I've kind of ratted myself out on this because I was in Nevada doing a pronghorn hunt this year, and people found out that I'm trying to do a pronghorn course that kind of mimics your University of Elk hunting. So I don't know when I'll get that done.
I know when your deadline is.
But anyhow. Yeah. So, what do you just tell the person stand by?
Stand by, because it's a great idea, and Randy and I and some others have been working diligently on some really cool stuff, and there'll be more information coming soon. But yeah, it's a great idea. I like the idea a lot.
Yeah. I really like that idea. So. But anyhow, for people who are interested in your university course, they can go out to elk101.com, right?
Yep, and use the promo code Elk Talk. And, this is always a time of the year when we get a ton of emails, and people, I've got a lot of emails recently from people who are successful, members of the online course who are successful, which is always incredibly fun to go through and see that. I get a lot of emails from people who haven't signed up for the course yet, who have just experienced an unsuccessful season, asking if they sign up for the course, if it'll help them based on what they saw in hunting season this year, and the answer is almost always yes. I think it will help you. So for those that had an unsuccessful elk season and didn't fill a tag, that want to increase their chances, I think the online course is a huge benefit there. Even for those who were successful that got their first taste of success maybe and want to replicate that. The online course is definitely geared towards consistently replicating success. So certainly recommend it. It's hard to recommend something I created and talk a whole bunch about it, but it was created with those hunters in mind and increasing their success and increasing the consistency of success. So I do hope that there's content in there that will do just that.
Well, I'm sure there is. I can promise people there is. And so hopefully they'll go do that. Then, wait, you got a lot on your plate yet? You got any elk hunts you're going on, or are you?
Yeah, I've still got.
I mean, you're going to take your daughter around. You're going to take her around in the back, in the bicycle trailer.
Yep, and I still have a rifle tag here in Idaho. So when she's not able to go, I'll be out scouting for her and maybe trying to fill my own tag. And then I know we talked earlier in the season that I drew a Colorado mule deer tag, and in light of Jessie tearing her knee up and having to have surgery and everything, I ended up turning that tag back in and won't be going to Colorado in November this year. So I'll have that to look forward to another year.
Pick that up.
Yeah, somebody else is going to be getting a phone call.
This year, somebody's going to get that on the leftover list and say, what? This tag takes 17 points. How did this end up on the return tag list?
Yep.
They should send a thank you card to Corey Jacobson.
Be on the lookout for it. Yep. But we aren't going to tell them what unit it's in. So
No. So, well, Corey, I apologize that I've been so out of the loop here, and it's been tough for us to coordinate calendars. Apologize to the audience for that complication. But
no apology needed.
I think we've identified another day here not too far out where I'll get in front of a computer and we'll do another podcast. And hopefully I have some big stories to tell. I've my brother and sister and I have rotated the care thing with my mom, where I have a sweepstakes winner who won the elk hunt with RMEF, and I leave in the morning to take that person, and then as quick as that hunt's done, I fly back to Minnesota. But maybe I'll have a big story to tell about the winner shooting his first elk. So
that would be awesome. Yeah.
And if people have topics they want us to talk about, they go to elktalkpodcast.com, right?
Yep. Just click the contact link there. And I noticed that the website isn't updating with all the most recent episodes. So I'll get on that today and make sure that's up to date. But yep, they can just visit elktalkpodcast.com, click the contact link, and send an email, and it arrives in both of our inboxes. We both see every email that comes through, and that's where we get some of these questions that we refer to in these episodes.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody who listens and everybody who sends us feedback or questions. Even though we don't respond to all of them, we get them, and that's part of what we do to determine what content we talk about. So,
yep. And even if we don't directly answer,
I'm going to let you go.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, even though we don't directly answer all the questions, we do, they stay top of mind, and hopefully in a roundabout way, at least we get to them at some point. So, but yeah. Randy, it's good to hear from you.
You guys are in for some snow?
Yeah, we've got 9 of the next,
right,
not yet, but 9 of the next 10 days are either rain or snow. So we're getting some moisture.
Wow. We've got snow supposedly coming possibly tomorrow. And then it looks like bluebird weather, but you can't trust a weatherman. I always tell people, told my son, you should have become a weatherman instead of an engineer, because you can be wrong 9 out of 10 times and you can blame it on somebody else and get all this high exposure, a lot of visibility, endorsements for used car dealers and other stuff. And you don't ever have to be right. So
that's a lot like running a podcast.
Yeah, now that you mention it, dang.
Yeah. We're just like weathermen.
Just make it up, right?
Yeah, just make it up.
Yeah, we make it up. Well, hopefully you have a good rest of your season, Corey. We'll talk in about a week, and appreciate everybody hanging in here with us.
Sounds good, and our prayers are with you and your mom, Randy.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Corey.
Yep. Talk to you later.